Before we begin today's video, I just wanted to give a bit of additional context regarding this topic in particular. If you wish to skip this segment and head straight to the video, then feel free to go to the timestamp shown below. It's a bit shorter than my other videos for reasons I'll be explaining now. For everyone still hanging around, let's get to it. In all honesty, this was a project I announced immediately following the most recent Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, as in the one that released over a year ago. Long story short, this project never happened. The original plan was for me to watch a ton of Studio Ghibli films and edit together a documentary-esque video about all the similarities between Breath of the Wild and Ghibli works. It's no secret that the game took much inspiration from Studio Ghibli, with a lot of that inspiration coming from a title called Princess Mononoke. In fact, I highly recommend watching this video made by Beyond Ghibli, which focuses on the connections between Mononoke and Breath of the Wild. Now, the reason I wanted to make this video isn't because of the first game, but its sequel. Just as Breath of the Wild was inspired by Ghibli works, the same could be said for the second game due to reasons I'll elaborate further on much later. As of now, I have watched a handful of films made by the studio, but there are some that I still want to get to before making this big video. And because I put off this project for so long, it got to the point where I didn't want to make a massive documentary on it since we still don't know much about the game. There's a chance that the sequel will have no connections whatsoever to Ghibli, so for now I'm going to make a much shorter video, and if there is more to work off of in the future, you can expect to see more from this topic in the coming months or year. With that said, I hope you enjoy the video. It's no exaggeration to say that the wait for Breath of the Wild 2 has been quite rough. Not only did we have to wait 2 whole years for a second trailer, but following that announcement, the game was inevitably delayed to spring of 2023. And sure, my excitement for the game has gone down a considerable amount given how long we've gone without any sort of news, but it could be worse. Just ask any Metroid fan. The topic for today's video: Studio Ghibli. Studio Ghibli is a Japanese animation film studio known for works such as Spirited Away, Castle in the Sky, Princess Mononoke, the list goes on. In fact, at one point they held the record for the highest grossing Japanese film, that being Spirited Away, which was only recently beaten by 2020's Demon Slayer Mugen Train. And as of right now, half of the films on this list are ones made by Studio Ghibli. Needless to say, the impact these movies had on the industry was massive, especially since some of these films were released at a time when animation was viewed as something only enjoyed by children. Enter Princess Mononoke, a film released in 1997, considered to be one of Studio Ghibli's greatest works. It tells of a prince named Ashitaka whose arm is cursed by a demon, a curse which grants him incredible strength, but at the cost of his own life. He's banished from his homeland and heads west in hopes of finding a cure before it's too late. Throughout his journey, he finds himself in a war between two opposing sides: the humans of Irontown, who continue to mine the valley of its resources, and the animals of the forest, their homes deforested and destroyed, all for the sake of profit and greed. Princess Mononoke explores both perspectives of this war, whether it be the leader of Irontown, Eboshi, or the wolf girl San. This war takes up a good portion of the film, one which both sides suffer greatly from. If it's not clear by now, one of the main themes of this film is the environment, the classic man versus nature often seen in fiction. As humans, we become obsessed with progression and whatever the next big invention is. But, as one ambitious alchemist used to say, to create something of equal value must be lost. While humanity may prosper with its groundbreaking advancements in technology, often it's nature itself that suffers. Pollution, deforestation, fossil fuels, all of these have a negative impact on the place we call our home. In fact, one of the most prominent characters in the film is the forest spirit, described as the god of life and death. It takes the form of an animal while also having a human face, with the powers to both give life and take it. a representation of both sides of this ongoing conflict. Yet it's humanity's selfishness which ends up doing the most damage to both sides, as killing the forest spirit releases its more destructive nature. Irontown is destroyed, and nature itself withers and dies. Not even the tree spirits are spared from this gruesome fate, and while nature is restored, it's stated that the forest spirit is dead. Breath of the Wild tells us of a highly advanced civilization 10,000 years ago, ones who built the technology we see in the present. A kingdom now in ruins in a post-apocalyptic-like setting. A big part of Breath of the Wild is exploring this once prosperous civilization which has now crumbled due to that very same technology once used to help the kingdom. When traversing through the open world, one can't help but notice a stark contrast between nature and technology. Shrines, towers, and massive pillars surrounding Hyrule Castle. While these structures appear to have withstood the passage of time, others such as Castletown and the Temple of Time have not aged so nicely, many of these places being overrun by the poisonous substance known as malice, or even the forces of nature itself. In fact, many stories of the series have players visit ruins of highly advanced civilizations now lost to history, such as the ancient robots of Skyward Sword's Lanayru province, a region stripped bare of its natural resources which eventually transformed into a barren wasteland due to the rapid change in climate. Now, I wouldn't say that Breath of the Wild's world is an exact mirror of the one portrayed in Princess Mononoke, and my explanation of this film is definitely an oversimplification of it. Much of this stuff is rather obvious to anyone watching it, and there's so much more to Princess Mononoke than meets the eye, whether it be references to Japanese folklore or culture, or other hidden themes. But this video is mostly due to how it relates to Breath of the Wild, and more importantly, the sequel. In reality, this whole rabbit hole began with the 2019 trailer. One of the shots is of Link recoiling and grasping his right hand, which has taken on the same greenish color as the one holding down Ganondorf. It was believed that perhaps that same hand somehow fuses with Link in this cutscene. It didn't take long for people to start making connections to a bit of concept art from the first game, which appears to be a figure with a right arm that transforms into a variety of useful gear, a cannon, bow, and mechanisms similar to Skyward Sword's beetle. Cut to the 2021 trailer, and even more information is given to us. One of the first shots in the teaser is of malice flowing up Link's right arm. Given his reaction, it's not a stretch to believe that he's experiencing some sort of pain or discomfort from this. In fact, we get to see the aftermath of this as following shots show Link's right arm, but something's clearly off about it. Is it solely due to the hand merging with his, or was his arm damaged by some of the malice in the previous shot? What's more, Link's arm appears to be loaded with new abilities, including a time reversal mechanic, so it's very likely that this is going to be the replacement for the Sheikah Slate and its runes. Once again, we can look back to Princess Mononoke. I talked much of the environmental themes in the film, but there's one other aspect of it which sticks out given this new information. That being the incident which kicks off Ashitaka's adventure to the west. The brave prince fights off a demon to protect his village, but this victory isn't without its cost. Part of this entity latches onto Ashitaka's right arm, cursing him before its inevitable demise. When you compare this detail to the hero's arm in Breath of the Wild 2's trailer, one can't help but notice the similarities. In fact, this curse is strikingly similar to the purplish-red substance known as malice, responsible for the corruption of both Sheikah technology and nature itself. The opening shot of Princess Mononoke pits our protagonist against a monstrous demon, a curse that's powerful enough to poison life itself, as we see it do to the nearby plants and grass. Wherever this demon goes, a trail of death is left behind. In Breath of the Wild, malice is found throughout the world, latching onto nature, spreading like a sort of disease. A substance poisonous enough to damage the player, as well as its surroundings. Like the Curse of Mononoke, malice seems to eat away at nature itself, leaving behind dead trees and a lack of vegetation. We learn more about Ashitaka's curse later in the film, and how the demon that cursed him was once a mighty boar god by the name of Nago. Nago was transformed into a demon after being consumed by hatred and fear. He was shot in battle, with the bullets still lodged into his flesh, which slowly corrupted him. This concept of hatred being the source of demons is something that should sound familiar for any Zelda fan, with Demise's curse being the thing that sets the series in motion, described as an endless cycle of death and rebirth, a hatred strong enough to curse the hero and princess for all eternity. Nago's last words to Ashitaka and his people mirror this. "Soon, all of you will feel my hate, and suffer as I have suffered." This threat made by Nago, in a way, comes true as he passes this curse onto the main character, who throughout the film experiences tremendous pain and suffering, while also struggling to control the curse so he himself doesn't become a demon. One can't help but notice how the curse wrapping itself around Ashitaka's arm bears resemblance to the shot of malice flowing up Link's right hand, a substance that we know is born of one's intense feelings of hatred. In fact, games such as Skyward Sword and Spirit Tracks demonstrate how anyone can harbor intense feelings of gratitude or hatred. One powerful moment of Princess Mononoke is a scene partway through the film, where Ashitaka intervenes between San and Eboshi. While not cursed, both parties are driven by their negative emotions. Ashitaka describes it as a demon inside both of them, much like what happened to Nago and Okoto. This is another huge theme in Princess Mononoke, not letting hatred consume you. A theme which may or may not have a role in the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Perhaps the malice that went after Link's arm is slowly killing him, much like what we see in Princess Mononoke. Or maybe the green hand fused with the hero as a means to stop this curse from spreading. It might not play out exactly the same, however there's definitely a connection between the two. Just by looking at how this film inspired the first game is enough to support this. As Beyond Ghibli pointed out in his fantastic analysis of Breath of the Wild and Princess Mononoke, the opening shot of the film is eerily similar to the initial teaser of what was once known as Zelda U. This spider-like creature may have even served as inspiration for the Guardians. In fact, when looking at some concept art for Breath of the Wild, I noticed that one design in particular was eerily similar to the monstrous demon Ashitaka fights. The fact that these designs were even conceptualized for a Zelda game is rather insane. We've seen the series cover darker and more mature themes, such as Majora's Mask, but these designs definitely feel like something out of Mononoke. There's also the Lord of the Mountain, described as a noble creature watching over the animals that make their home in the forest. It's similar to Mononoke's forest spirit in both design and purpose. The same can be said for the Kodama that appear throughout the film, tree spirits which somewhat resemble the Koroks of Breath of the Wild and Wind Waker. Other films, such as Castle in the Sky, may have also served as inspiration, especially when it comes to Breath of the Wild's sequel. Both protagonists set out on an adventure to find Laputa, a castle floating on an island in the sky. This civilization was highly advanced, and used their technology to ascend to the heavens. A scene which is mirrored in the most recent trailer for the sequel to Breath of the Wild, where we see Hyrule Castle float up into the clouds. In fact, only a remnant of the civilization is ever seen in the film. We get a better look at this kingdom in the credits of the movie, which shows multiple landmasses navigating through the sky. Again, one could look at this as inspiration for Breath of the Wild 2, as we see Link explore multiple floating islands within Hyrule's sky. This advanced civilization also built robots not unlike the Sheikah. Robots which actually served as inspiration for the Minecraft team when constructing the Iron Golem mob. Perhaps the same was true for the Guardians. I'm sure the answers will become much clearer once we see more of this game and what it has to offer. But before wrapping up this brief video, I wanted to talk a bit more about how Princess Mononoke portrays its demons. At the very beginning of the film, we're given a scene with Ashitaka and the village elder, where she states that the thing which turned Nago into a demon was the iron ball lodged into his body. An iron ball, we later find out, is actually a bullet from a gun. But a critical bit of information which is sort of hinted at throughout the film is that the bullet itself isn't what turns someone into a demon. Rather, it's succumbing to hatred. And Princess Mononoke does a fantastic job with demonstrating this through one of the characters. And no, I'm not talking about Ashitaka, rather the wolf god Moro. In the midst of the film, it's revealed that, like Nago, Moro was shot in the chest, and is slowly dying from the iron bullet within her. We can assume that the reason Moro hasn't yet transformed into a demon is because, like the protagonist, she's able to control her hatred and fear. Another great example is seen in the later portion of the film, where a greatly wounded Akoto only succumbs to his hatred after the humans provoke him. In this way, the Iron Ball served as a sort of catalyst which, while not directly responsible, was the source of those intense emotions that led to the transformation into a demon. On another note, I find it interesting how the only animals which succumb to hatred are boars, given how Ganondorf's demon form is a pig-like entity. But since this has been a thing ever since the first Zelda game on the NES, it's obviously a coincidence since Princess Mononoke was released after. It's possible that Ghibli was inspired by Zelda when making films, but again, probably a coincidence. When looking into the significance of the boar in Japanese culture, these beasts are both feared and respected for their courage, and also symbols of recklessness, fertility, and prosperity. In the coming months, I hope we can get more information on Breath of the Wild 2, since it could shed more light on this matter. Once again, if this is the case, then I might make a much more thorough video on this topic in the foreseeable future. That's going to be all for today's video. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Zelda series and Ghibli franchise, then I'd be ever so grateful if you considered subscribing to the channel. I also want to thank my patrons, as your support is greatly appreciated. And if you guys have any ideas for future videos, feel free to post them in the comments below. I've been NintendoBlackCrisis, and I'll see you all next time.